Virtual seminar or Atmanirbhar Bharat, Vocal for Local, where names like Sanjeev Sanyal, Principal Economic Advisor, Mr. K.V. Kamath, of course, needs no introduction, Rhythm Desai of Morgan Stanley are giving their perspective.
Flexibility and ability to adapt to whatever this new world throws up. And that is why if you look at the supply side, a very important macro approach that we have is that we have to be adaptable to this. So if you look at all the reforms we have done, all of them at some level aim towards flexibility and adaptation. This is true for the labor markets, where we have both introduced safety and working conditions measures for labor, which are 21st century, but at the same time introduce flexibility so that industry and employers can adapt to the new challenges of this new and opportunities, by the way, of this new environment. We have done the same thing for agriculture by freeing it up and liberalizing this sector so that it can also adapt to it, and we get away from the old path, sort of the license permit raj that had been perpetuated in agriculture. But since I do have some key members of the financial sector here, I should also mention that we have also similarly done this in the financial sector by putting in place foundational reforms for this sector. In recent times, we have done several, but just in the last 2 weeks, we put in place the bilateral netting law, which is foundational for creating a corporate debt market in India, as well as releasing large amounts of capital that are unnecessarily tied up because of the lack of a bilateral netting law. Remember, we introduced Basel II and Basel III type norms in India, which presume the existing of bilateral netting. But because we didn't put it together here, it meant that lots of capital was tied up, and then entire markets didn't develop, like the CDS market. So we have consequently put this foundational reform in place. We have done something similar with factoring because that was needed for the trade finance side of things. These are foundational reforms that will be in existence for long periods of time. Now, how does all of this connect through to Atmanirbhar Bharat and Vocal for Local? Now, let me say right up front that Atmanirbhar Bharat is not a vision of a return to import substitution of the 1950s. Some people try to paint it that way. That is not the case. It is also consequently not the case that we are trying to recreate the license permit raj. So let me say here very quickly that I panic when I hear suggestions for creating district level committees of any kind or national level committees. This, I'm afraid, is the path to Sarkar Nirbhar Bharat. It is not the path to Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is. We would like to have simpler rules, create paths for the entrepreneurial class to be able to leverage itself into doing various risks, take opportunities. It is not the idea of having some top-down kind of sarkari committees which decide what you should or shouldn't do with your businesses. We want to free you up, just like we are freeing up big farmers, we want to free you up. Please come back to us with suggestions of creating regulatory frameworks. Laissez-faire may not work, but regulatory frameworks so that it allows you to do what you do in a sensible set of regulations that allows you to perform. Please do not ask us to create any more committees, partly because I'll have to attend many of those meetings. Now, as far as going forward on this line of thought is concerned, let me also say that when we are talking about vocal for local, all of these things, it is the case that we will have to be adaptable in the terms of how we interpret this for the new world, because the new world will emerge. But let me give you an illustration of how we are quite adaptable in terms of using these principles. For example, our participation in RCEP, we judged to be not in national interest for a variety of reasons. This is not to be interpreted that we do not want to somehow participate in global supply chains. Far from it, the Prime Minister has made it adequately clear that we want to participate in global supply chains. And we may also, in fact, want to sign up to trade deals as well. But the fact that we didn't think this particular trade deal worked for us does not mean that we will not sign other trade deals. We can very well pursue other trade deals where it serves the national purpose. So the same adaptable approach exists everywhere else. While we generally adopt the principle of openness, of allowing, generally a free market approach, there will be areas where we will provide special support to create an industrial cluster where we think this cluster needs support. This is an example of that is what we want to do with, for example, the pharmaceutical sector. We have a very vibrant pharmaceutical sector, but obviously its resilience depends if its resilience is brought into question if it depends heavily on inputs from another country. And as we have recently seen in this COVID disruption, those essential inputs may be not available, or those supply chains are disrupted, then this causes a problem. So there may be a case, for example, of providing support from the government to create some protection and build up the sectors for providing certain select APIs for the pharmaceutical sector. So there we may consider providing some support. But the context should be very, very clear. This is not a context of a return to some Atmanirbharta of a import substituting pre-1991 world. We do not want to go back to creating environments where we have to drive outdated cars and have a supply constraint. That is totally not the case. We remain open to foreign direct investment. We want to create Indian multinational companies, and we definitely want to participate in global supply chains. However, Atmanirbharta means that we are willing to support Indian industry, Indian entrepreneurial energy, and Indian human capital, and so on. And wherever that requires support, please tell us what we need to do. One of the big asks of Indian industry for years has been simplifying the labor laws, and we have done that at least at the central level. Many of the state governments are also doing things at their level. Similarly, we lowered corporate tax rates last year, as you will remember. I hope you are taking advantage of that. We have tried to change the relationship between taxpayer and tax payee and the tax collector by formulating clearly a taxpayer code where we have codified the rights of the taxpayer. So all of these are efforts to try and create an Atmanirbhar Bharat, Atmanirbhar at every level. But be very clear, this is not a vision to returning to a country run by some centralized planning commission where some old wise men tell everybody what to do. That is not at all the idea, and it certainly is not the idea of recreating this as a hierarchy of these committees running this country. Totally not the case. So if anything, we want to unwind these outdated regulatory environments which essentially constrain you from taking risks. Thank you very much.